Hey y'all, what's up? Just wanted to come in here and let y'all know I definitely went live this past Thursday. Had an amazing conversation on what it feels like and what we should do about what that feels like when you're overqualified and unpaid. I had an amazing conversation with Joshua David Mardice of the Ask Josh David fame on LinkedIn. And it was a great conversation. It was preceded by, and he, starts the live stream explaining how we ended up hopping on a call a week before this live. And in that conversation, we talked about a bunch of stuff, because if anybody's had a private conversation with a Ratchet Sage, you already know. We talked about a bunch of stuff. And in us talking about all those different things, one of the things that came up is how it feels when you come into an employment situation. They give you a title. It doesn't really matter whether it's assistant, coordinator, manager, director, and they want you to do what I would consider consulting things. And we got to talking about the difference between an employee and a consultant, and it kind of blew his mind because he had never had anybody put that together in that way. And explain the danger of that, not just for the person sitting in that situation, which is obviously the oppressed party, because they don't have power in that situation like the employer does. But this actually doesn't help employers either. It doesn't get them what they actually need. When you're expecting an employer to do something that a consultant can only provide, you're still not going to get the optimal results you're looking for, and that hurts your business. And whether or not you have someone to blame, like, oh, I'm just going to blame this employee, right? You could do that. You keep recycling through, different iterations of that role with different people, and your business is still in the same motherfucking situation it was from the very beginning. So I caution against thinking that this employee to consultant misdiagnosis only hurts employees. It doesn't. It hurts the entire shebang. The business is hurt, and whenever the business is hurt, all the stakeholders involved with the business are hurt. So that could be investors, clients, customers, supporters, people who provide sponsored money to your nonprofit. They're all hurting because you are misdiagnosing an employee. You're conflating an employee with a consultant, and you don't understand the difference. It's like having a problem and then getting the wrong prescription for it, right? So you go to the doctor, and instead of you getting surgery, which is what you really need, you end up getting some aspirin. Well, you're going to be in a whole heap of trouble. The same thing happens with businesses when they do not understand this misdiagnosis. So while I was talking to Joshua about this from a perspective of being within that oppressed seat, when you don't have the power to change this, what you have the power to do is to change the situationship for yourself. And in changing that situation for yourself, you got to understand what's going on in the situationship. You have to have clarity within it. And this is what that conversation was meant to do, is to provide that clarity to those who are of the oppressed party. But I know that in my work at Authentic Distinction, I'm working with changemakers, people who actually have a business and don't want to do these things to the people that they're working with. Whether these are outsourced employees, whether these are people who are working full-time within your business, you have teams of people. You don't want to be this violent. I know you don't. That's why you're over here at Team Authentic Distinction, right? And so the reality is, how can you avoid this? And we talk about that a little bit towards the end as well. And actually, not a little bit. I talked about it a lot. So I just want to make sure that y'all understand this is framed from both perspectives. Although I think it was marketed for the oppressed, I made sure there was a little bit in there for everybody. And so putting that out there, I also want to share in all candidness, but without any heat or shade, that Joshua was having some mic issues. And so I'm going to put in a little AI voice that will give you the questions that Joshua was asking me, and then you'll get to hear my full answer to Joshua. Every now and then you might hear like a chop in from Joshua or an ad lib, because this was actually live with Joshua, and I'll make sure I leave the link so that you can go watch the live version if you want. But I have heard from many of my neural spicy babies and sibs that it was very difficult for them to listen to it and to process it, and they kept trying to skip from Joshua's point to my point because the noise was just causing a little bit too much interference for them, and it was making it difficult for them to process. And I 100% support that, and that's why I'm putting together this version of it so that you can hear what the Ratchet Sage had to offer, as well as Joshua's insightful questions. I want y'all to know, usually People come have me come speak, and they have some bullshit ass questions, and I'm just like, y'all know how to Ratchet Sage do. I'd be like, here's the answer, here's the answer, here's the answer. No, when Joshua sent me the pre-reading questions to prepare for this conversation, because Joshua don't play around with what he does, and I got on the call, and I was completely prepared, and I had unpacked. I mean, I had to really do some soul searching for some of these questions, and I really love that because it stretches you, right? And in that stretch, I realized, oh my gosh, I want to make sure that people understand this. This isn't just, oh, go watch the replay. I need to unpack some of the stuff. We only had less than an hour to talk, so y'all know me. There's so much I done brought up. Let me give y'all not only the recap of what happened, which is what this is, but there's also going to be some connecting the dots, right? What actually does this mean? On your side, if you're in the oppressed seat and you're dealing with the lack of power within this structure, how do you empower yourself, right? We're going to talk about that. But then on the other side, if you are the employer, if you're one of my change makers and you don't want to be doing this violence, what does that look like for you? And we're going to talk about that as well. So let's get into the recap part of this. And like I said, you will hear a little bit of an AI voice. It's going to try to sound like me. It's not going to be me. And this is really reflecting the insightful, amazing questions that I was asked by Joshua David Mardice of #AskJoshDavid with the TM at the end. All right, y'all. And so y'all can go check him out. And like I said, I'll make sure that I put the link to the full live video that was on LinkedIn. Y'all can go check it out yourself. See all the comments and stuff. Y'all know I got everybody in a rave, because that's what I do. Let's hype it up. You know what I'm saying? We gotta talk about these things because these things are really important. And I want to have these hard conversations, but I don't want anybody to feel like they're beat up and bashed on, because again, these are failing systems. You're not the problem. The failing system is the problem. And so highlighting this failing system with this misdiagnosis and how it doesn't help the employee, but it also don't help the employer either. And y'all know I got the fix, right? We got to fix these failing systems. We can't just let them play, and we're not just going to talk about them and expose them. We're going to expose them and then fix it, okay? So that's what we did, and I'm going to break it down to you, and this is just part one in this recap. And peace. Joshua David Mardice opens up with, so first and foremost, Ebony, thank you so much for being here. I am happy to be here. I'm happy to have hard conversations with great people. Sharing some background with audience, Joshua David Mardice says, but yeah, I'm excited about getting started. So if you want to tell them a little bit about what we're talking about. You know this, and I love how you framed it as an employee versus consultant misdiagnosis. I just want to put that out there for the record, that did not come from me. That was Joshua's brilliance. I feel like it is a misdiagnosis. I think after our conversation, you did your thing as a gifted child. You started processing it, and you were like, yeah, this is a misdiagnosis. There's a mismatch, and we keep trying to make it fit. On our side, did people who have so much to offer to the world, and then also on their side, where they're kind of continuously enforcing this as employers. And I want to be clear, as I say employers and employees, I don't care if you work for the government, a hospital, a university, a nonprofit, a little small nonprofit. I work for the school system. It's happening everywhere. This is a very systemic thing. I think it is out of control. I think a lot of people don't like it, but they don't know what to do about this train that's just out of control. So yeah, I think just really talking about it, because I think a lot of people are in pain, particularly people who are gifted. I think the average person who goes to work to get a paycheck, they don't feel this. They don't deal with what we're talking about today. But there are so many of us who do. I think people are put in situations where they're unable to showcase what they have to offer. And I think that what we're talking about today, this misdiagnosis, is a part of that.
There's this thing where it's like, oh man, I love Josh, I love Ebony. You know, they're so attentive and whatever. And it's like, again, we come in as the pet, where it's like we're these cute, sweet, awesome little black people that really fit in the system and don't cause too much trouble, and don't shake the table too much. But I think within 90 days, typically, people such as yourself and I don't mean to speak for you, but people that have multi-skills and are actually taking longer to get hired because of the multi-skills. They're terrified to hire you because they don't necessarily know if you can fit into said box that we put you in, right? But we, of course, do the jumps and the leaps and the songs and the dances to get into the job. You get the job, and then what happens? You go in as a coordinator, but then you find yourself as a manager, pseudo-manager, getting paid as a coordinator. And so the whole point of this conversation, this misdiagnosis, is where Josh and Ebony were hired to do 3 things, and 90 days later, we're now doing 6 things. And let's be very clear, this is not about laziness. This is about the fact that people like you and I don't have the privilege of saying, hey, I don't want to do that. And then just, yeah, sure. Yeah, it's okay. It's cool. Bring it on. So now we're working 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. while everybody else is leaving the office. We're coming home late, less sleep, don't go to the gym, eating late at night. We're paid pennies, so I got to eat Taco Bell, right? I got to go get Mickey D's, right? Because I'm still living in a very low rent, not in a great area. Meanwhile, I'm doing the job of my boss. So let's just get on there.
It's delicious, isn't it? Delicious and violence. When I think about how this persists and why there isn't an uprising, I can only think about fear. I can only think about oppression and things that I don't necessarily study. So I won't speak to. What I will speak to is that gifted and talented says, I'm here to serve. I don't think that we were, I don't want to speak for all gifted and talented children, but for me, I wasn't put into a special classroom. They literally put us in a separate school. There's all of us in a school, right? And we were in Oakland, California, so what that, Black Pantherville, a lot of our administrators, a lot of our teachers were Black people. They were well educated. Many of them went to HBCUs. So they see us as like the rising future, right? And when you're young, articulate, can read something, memorize a whole Maya Angelou, and win at the Oratorical Fest, I'll never forget that. But when those types of things happen, people just immediately say, you're destined for greatness. And I wish that all children had this. I don't think that this should just be for children who we label as gifted and talented, because we're all born with what I call a unique rare solution. So we just trying to find the greatness, right? And we just got to figure out what that looks like in each person. However, for those of us who it looked like what they wanted it to look like in us, I feel like there was a lot of experimentation happening. And I joke around and say like, oh, they Michael Kors ultra'd us. But I think that there's a reality to you created these group of people, whether we were in a separate class for a certain amount of hours per day, you totally put us in a separate education, bust us out to Sacramento from Oakland so that we could have certain experiences. I remember being at Stanford. When I left Oakland, I came here to go to the 6th grade in Boston. So I was still less than 5th grade, and we spent 2 weeks at Stanford in the dorms, which I don't even know how safe that really was. I remember there being adult chaperones, but that was the first time I ever saw somebody have a swipe key card. Now, I'm in my mid-40s, so this is a long time ago. They had all of those things at Stanford at that time. And so I think just being put in what's possible, you almost kind of see the future before it's here. What does that do to your brain? I can't tell you how many people I've worked with and I'm processing something and they're just like, whoa, to see you go. And I'm like, I didn't even eat today. And I'm on 10%. So, and it's daunting. I also am one of those people, I don't have educated gang signs. I did not graduate from my formal education. I couldn't afford to stay at Howard University. Shout out to the Bison. And so for me, the biggest question I always get is like, where did you get your MBA? And I'm like, that's interesting. The streets, projects, being a consultant, the grind when I used to be addicted to the hustle and grind. You just pick up so many things. I mean, I was building SAP out the box in my late 20s. People were going to get certifications for that, but nobody wanted to pay for Ebony to go get a certification. And so I feel you on some level where it's like, I appreciate it. I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be able to do the things that I'm able to do today if it weren't for that conditioning.
Yeah.
That being said, there are also parts of it that really suck, right? And it's that misdiagnosis part. I can't tell you that there was ever an environment I went into where I wasn't looking to give my gifts. And in many ways feeling guilty, recognizing I have a lot of privilege. So I gotta give. I gotta give everywhere I go. There's been professional organizations that I've worked for free for years. Really should have been paying me over $100,000 per year for what I actually built and developed for them. And these are our own people, okay?
Talk about
a few organizations. Listen, come on now. I've had And then, of course, it happens in employment. I've had it done to me with as far as employers. Their favorite thing is to hire you as a coordinator, a manager, or an assistant.
Yep.
And it depends on how big the company is, and it's all the same.
Correct. Correct.
We're trying to see how much you will let us pile on you.
Yep.
I have witnessed and personally experienced people firing an assistant director, a coordinator, and the person who that person was under did not take on those extra roles, and it was passed to me as a coordinator, okay? And again, when you have the barriers of, you know a lot of things, I'm gonna tell you the other side of it, right? There's you're overqualified because you can process things, you see things, so you become that threat, but they don't realize it until 90 days in. That happens with many people who have the degrees, they went to school, and they just thought you was like them. They graduated and couldn't do nothing. And when they realize that you're not, that's where the pet to threat comes in. But I just want you to understand there's another side to it. And this is what comes from the people who realize immediately that they have consultant energy. When you come in and you're breaking something down, connecting the dots, seeing things from a perspective that nobody else has seen, and they're asking you questions to fix it, and you're like, yeah, really simple. You could do this, you could do that, you could do this, you could do that, you map it out, propose it, put together the whole Prezi presentation. I love Prezi. And at the end of the day, they just don't get it. And you keep having back and forth, and then the owner wants to take you out for lunch, and they still don't get it. At what point do you realize they don't get it because it's coming from you? There's a blinder that happens when you get hired at this level, but your skill sets are at this level.
Talk about it.
So you cannot fit in the role, but they're gonna try to make you fit. And every single time you kind of pop out a little bit, yeah, it's very scary for them. It's not only scary because they don't know what to do in that situation. The system is not constructed to hold that situation. They're not prepared for any of it, and all of it is risky. Financially risky, legally risky, logistically risky, operationally risky. It's all risky.
Yeah.
And so they are terrified, and you become the great unknown. They don't know what you're going to say. They don't know what you're going to do. They don't know what you're going to propose next. They don't know what you're going to expose next. And then they have no idea what your agenda is. And your agenda is to fix it. Because that's what we do. We change makers. We go in and we change things. But they're not ready to fix it.
What's the difference between being of service and simply providing a service? And how can we tell when that line is being crossed?
I always tell my clients there's a human in you, there's a change maker in you, and there's a leader in you. I'm not saying that there's 3 different Ebonies inside of me. I'm saying that I need to be clear which one I'm operating as. Just like I'm operating as a driver, I am not being a mom.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm on my phone, social media, and I'm not in the park with my son. I can't do both at the same time effectively, and they're both equally important. So I think, you got roles you got to play as a human. And you got roles that you got to play as a change maker. I feel like I choose as a human to be of service. So I call myself a zero fucks humanist. I'm going to be of service everywhere I go. It's the way I was raised. I feel like you give and you receive. If I'm giving and I'm not receiving in the area, it's not necessarily a quid pro quo, but you just go to some dead places and you be like, it's got stale over here. I'm going to take my biscuits over here. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to stay places where you don't feel like you're welcome or acknowledged or received well. But when you are offering a service, it's codified. You have blueprints. You have a wheelhouse that the work is coming from. You recognize it's not the same across the board. You're not doing the same thing with everybody. Can't be the same thing for everybody. Everyone's different. Every company's different. You're offering a service that solves a problem.
Sure.
I'm not obligated to solve a problem for anybody on this planet because I'm Ebony. The Ratchet Sage has made all kinds of promises to the world about the problems that she solves. That is me providing a service. But again, it's codified. There's something surrounding it. There's policies, procedures, and processes up and through. And I think that you don't have to have any of that structure to be of service. You just got to choose to be a good human and recognize we all on this floating rock trying to figure out what the hell is going on. we got all kind of, it's wild out there in these streets. You know, we need each other. I think that's all it really takes to be of service, and that's personally or professionally. But when you're thinking about, I am offering a service, so I feel like every time I've worked somewhere, I was offering a service.
Getting paid for that service that you were offering. Correct?
They were paying for the service I was offering, and I don't think I ever saw it any other way. And I think that's the game with us as gifted and talented kids. I mean, whether you see yourself as neurodistinct, emotionally sensitive, multi-hyphenate, you know, you get to choose how you identify yourself. I think that's super important, to self-label and self-define things. But at the end of the day, they said, you're gifted, you can do these great things, and we want you to do great things because you're going to go out there into the workforce and have these great positions and be astronauts and scientists and cure cancer and all the stuff they told us. And we believed it. And had no reason to not believe it. So yeah, when I go on my first interview, I'm seeing myself as exchanging my gifts for this paycheck and this benefits package for you to treat me right. Because if you don't, I'm walking out of here. My parents treated me right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I feel like some of this comes from an immense amount of privilege of knowing who I was and being treated like a human before a smart kid. Do you understand what I mean? So when I got into the workforce, yeah, this is a covenant, ain't it? You said this, I said this, we gonna work towards seeing if this is gonna work out for the first 90 days. Ain't that how this works? And I think I took that very seriously. I don't know how seriously they did. There was a lot of situations where I was like, I'm not doing this. But we have to decide, you can be of service for free. I can go volunteer at the local domestic violence shelter every damn day if I want to. That's being of service. That has everything to do with Ebony. But the moment I need a brand and a business to surround it, the moment I need a CV and a resume to perform it and prove it, oh, that's me providing a service. Joshua David Mardice then asked, what are the early red flags that you're being treated like a consultant, and why do so many Black professionals in particular get trapped in these unspoken rules? I don't care what the title is. If the deliverables look like strategy, systems, or creative direction, that's a consultant role. None of that together. Strategy, systems, and creative direction. We need you to set up the system, give us the strategy for the next quarter, map it out. I don't care what field you're in. No, that's a consultant's role. That's the difference between a consultant and an employee. When you start hearing companies say we're looking for self-starters, visionaries, people who wear many hats, these are clear red flags. And it's not that there's anything wrong with saying those things. There's something wrong with saying those things when they're not paired with, here is the authority, compensation, and resources to go along with it.
Yeah.
You're going to make me responsible for being a self-starter. Do I also get to choose my budget? Do I also get to hire my team? Do I also get to decide we're not printing it this way, we're going to do it this way? So it's nothing wrong with seeking a self-starter in an internship, in a lab. None of that is wrong. Nothing wrong with looking for a visionary, but you can't ask these people for those things without giving them those other things. And these things come with consulting naturally. The authority, because they came to you because they had a problem and they believe you're the expert that can solve it. You get the authority. If you tell them to do this, it's going to be $85,000 and we'll have this done for you in 2 weeks. They paid it. So that allows you to have whatever resources you need to pull that off in 2 weeks. See, that's the difference between the misdiagnosis of the employee and the consultant. And I would say third, what's a really, really big one? If you were given a crumbling department or a crumbling project and were asked to fix it, and again, no budget, no resources, no equity, no say, again, they're making you a consultant when you're really not. You're an employee. And so in the end, whether it goes well or bad, you're not going to fare well. If it goes well, they're going to take credit. You won't. So it's not going to advance your career the way that you think it is. You're putting in all this work. It's not going to do that. In the event that it goes bad, guess who's getting fired? Guess who fumbled the ball, right? Not that they didn't left you under-resourced. It's you that did it.
Yeah.
You know?
I think before we ask the why black people get trapped in it, I would say that build the plane as you're going, building the train tracks as we're on the train. And you know, again, in the past, you thought those were cute, but you realize, okay, if I accept this job, that means that I will be brought in as a consultant. I'm getting paid, so that's why it's like you fight like hell for whatever your title that you're getting, but you make sure that bonus structure is set up right. You make sure that that additional bonus that you're going to be given before you start the job is set up correctly, because in my mind, those are red flags, because that means that we don't know what's going to happen here, but we just need you to be on board. And we need you to put a smile on your face, man.
Do you think it depends? So, you know, I want to like the more like on the edge of privilege you are and respectability you are in this world, particularly as melanated people, I can tell you, you can demand those things and you likely will get them. I have seen elite black people fight for those things and get those things when they have the degrees, they have the backing, they're a part of certain groups, Jack and Jills. It's a real thing. So let's not act like that's not real. I always like to start with the truth, right? But what I will say is, for those of us on the other end of the spectrum, you might have been like me, you grew up in the hood, very educated, talented, intelligent, but you don't have those educated gang signs after your name. There's only so much they gonna let you say before they send you out. So I just want to be very clear. Some of this is a privilege conversation. What I can tell you is that we all can make the right choice for us. You got to set up the right system for you. There were plenty of times where I sat in a situation, and y'all can see it on my LinkedIn background. Sat in a situation for a number of years because I had to do what I had to do. The whole time I'm building on the side, okay? I'm building contracts. I'm signing contracts to be good for the next 2 years so that when I leave this job, I got cushion, okay? And I think if people say, how did you know I closed my consulting company right before COVID. So COVID started in 2020, I ended it in 2019. How did you close your consulting company to start what is now Authentic Distinction? I thought it was going to be coaching. It's a systems thing. It's another story for another day. How did you know to do that? I didn't know to do that. I knew I was done being a consultant for similar reasons to this, but it's another story for another day. So I got into it and I said, I'm going to back off of this job. But back off means stop letting them give me extra projects, because I don't like to walk away from something and leave it half-assed. So I feel like my name's attached to it, that's my worth. I don't have a degree, so it's very important to me to make sure that people know the quality of my work, right? But at some point, I just let it go. It's like the business has got to go, close PLHB Consulting. What do you do in those situations? You have to build up something on the side. And so I feel like the first step before you say anything to them and do anything with them, you gotta say something to you. What is your truth? If you know you can go without pay for a couple of months and the savings is right, go sit and frolic, have some joy, figure out your next, get creative. You might ever have to go back to work. You have the cushion to figure that out. There are a lot of people who don't have that cushion. And in the event that you don't have that cushion, I don't want y'all to feel like I'm on this live saying to you, quit your job, jeopardize your life. Oppression is real. What I do want you to understand is that you can start game planning today to be out that motherfucker when you want to be out. And I guess that's where I'm coming from, is that you have choices. I've seen people leave a full-time job and Uber full-time and make a better way at that than having a full-time job. I've seen people stay at a job until they get to a certain retirement age, but the whole 10 years prior to that, they were building out their business. There is no right or wrong way, but you got to live with the choices that you make. And I think many of us are feeling like we have no other choice. If we're stuck in this situation, I can't go off, I can't lose my job, somebody I know who I respect got me this job, so they just feel stuck. And I'm just here to suggest you're not stuck. Recognize the red flags, recognize you're in the trap, and get yourself out. Whether you have to start making your own little way out, setting up your own little railroad for you to kind of go on. And don't be afraid to just let them know, I just actually can't do that. It's just not keep taking on more, because that leaves you to go find your way out, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Joshua David Mardice then asked, why does this misdiagnosis happen so much to systemically oppress people, and Black people specifically? Whiteness. I believe wholeheartedly that whiteness has taught us that we have to prove ourselves. That just existing and being isn't enough. And so we focus so much on doing, and we've lost, in many ways, track of who we are. And so an artist who knows who they are is not denigrating their art, whatever that looks like to them. And they set boundaries on what that looks like for them. And I think when it comes to employment, whether we have had it out, been broke or not, just came from straight up privilege, silver spoon, lived it up in the hills, it doesn't really matter. We carry that in our DNA from our ancestors. I can't speak for those of Caribbean descent or those who come from the motherland, because I am a Black American. That's the lived experience I can speak from. But I do know that there's this weight of, I have to prove myself. So even if you become head of neurosurgery at such and such, university, you are still trying to prove yourself when you're amongst your neurosurgery colleagues. It's this constant competition. I think some of it is Willie Lynch. I'm gonna keep it real. Like, I'm not gonna go into all of that, but I do feel like a lot of it is just us, instead of just sitting in ourselves. And y'all talked about it yesterday in ways I couldn't begin to talk about it, but we don't sit with ourselves as much as we could. And then the danger of what comes out when we sit with ourselves, saying stuff that people are not ready to hear. And that comes from whether or not we came from the gifted and talented track, because we definitely come from the melanated track, and that indigenous track. It's in the DNA. That's so I feel like the moment we stop trying to prove ourselves and know ourselves and then act accordingly. So if the doing comes from the being, I always tell my clients, you be before you do. So anything you're doing, whether you're proud of it or you're not, it stems from something you be. Be more in touch with your being than your doing. But the ego will have you focused on your doing. So I think it's that ego. And I think when we really focus on, no, I really am here to serve with gifts that I did not give myself. Okay, we didn't choose the path we were on. We might have made choices along the way. We didn't choose what we came here with, and we didn't get to choose every opportunity that came our way. So we deal with what we got. And I think when you recognize that, you see your humanity, you respect the fact that you got greatness, and on the other side you got mess, you can see that in other people. And so it becomes less competitive, and it becomes more, oh, what you need, what you need, oh, what you need, oh, what you need, oh, like it is at the cookout. And I think that's when we talk about the cookouts, we talk about the barbershops, we talk about the hair salons and the nail shop. You know why? Because that's where we can divest from whiteness. And we do this divesting, we are going to be caught up in this misdiagnosis because we put ourselves in it. We literally just jump into the pot of water, trying to prove ourselves through a lens of whiteness that we don't need, and no one in the world needs, not even white people. And I want to be clear.
We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. That's another day, another conversation.
Yeah, that's another conversation. I just want to be clear because I don't want nobody to think that I have something against white people. I really don't. I got something against whiteness, whether it shows up in me or us or anyone. It's just not useful to humanity, and that's what I think I mean by when I say I'm a zero fucks humanist. But
yeah. I love that. And bringing up the barbecue, black salon, barbershops, subconsciously what it does to the system. You know what I mean? There is a provision, there is a offering of energy, there is an exchange. What can I do for you? Give me braid, give me a fade, turn me from what I look like to what I can become, end up being what we see inside, to then be able to move in this world a lot better, right? So whether you got the Bantu knots and then I got the clean fade, or the cornrows, or the two strands, we walk out of there a self-actualized version of ourselves, even if it's temporary, because we need to go back about 2 or 3 weeks, because the texture, the water. But anyway, I say all that to say I agree with you, I understand you guys, especially being Caribbean, or Black American, or African. Our parents' embraces behave, what they say, always. So when you allow that rule to play in your brain over and over again, you're like, all right, they said that for me to do 6 different jobs. I'm going to do 6 different jobs. And the goal is, if I be the good Labrador, I shouldn't get fired. What happens is we burn out within 6 months, typically. We're unhappy, we're gaining weight, we're paying our bills, but we're not living. And then you end up getting fired from a job that extracted from you, observed you, and said, hey, you're not performing at the rate that you performed 6 months ago. Well, you have been doing 12 jobs, right? What did you expect? What did you think was going to happen? Well, you're black. I thought you were going to be the unicorn that we hired you to be. Well, that whiteness, that right there, the privilege of production who you thought I was supposed to be is laced in our oppressors. And again, this is not a white people thing, it's a whiteness. But we're going to move right on because I know we can get off topic with that one. So, the next question. How can gifted and neurodivergent professionals reframe work not as an obligation, but as a sacred contribution? And what kind of boundaries or agreements are you towards that sanctuary? So, I love this question because I think you talked about it earlier, about it. Work shouldn't feel like an obligation. And before everybody starts talking about, if you're doing what you're called to do, okay? Ebony is a systems lady. I am someone that goes from strategy to chief of staff to chief operations to strategist to photographer, whatever, right? These are things that happen to me naturally. I don't hate it. You know, when I worked at Ebony Magazine and I was social media director, I was working 12-hour, 15-hour days because I was obsessed with my job. Not for status, but because the more I did for the job, the more it fed me. And sure, in an unhealthy way, but I don't care. I was doing what I love to do. So that felt like me talking to our black people through Ebony Magazine's lens felt like a contribution that was sacred. I was learning about my blackness, I had this white face, and it was giving me life, learning and contributing to who we are as people from a legacy brand like Ebony Magazine, right? When we talk about the boundaries, though, or the agreements, all those went out the window. Because I love what I do. So we got to talk about when we love our jobs and almost the jobs, right? Like they get to do these things that you don't pay attention. So I'm going to stop talking about that.
I ain't gonna hold you. When you sent me this question, you know, how do we reframe work not as obligation but as sacred contribution? And I was like, I don't say the word sacred that often. One of the coaches I work with, shout out to Filet Gang, she uses sacred a lot. So I was like, does he think I'm Filet? I'm not Filet. I don't use sacred. And I started to really think about what sacred plus contribution means in my head. And it was really interesting because I really thought about, so being neurospicy, being a black person, living in a black body. So I don't care whether you were raised privileged and with money, not with money, no. But all of this just gives you an ability to see connections and patterns that other people don't. You're like living outside of the status quo. So you're seeing things, right? And other people can't see it. And so I think, and often people see what we do and they don't understand the being that goes into it. So there's a lens and a perspective I must have to be able to offer you this insight. They take the insight and go, oh, we have a new strategy, right? Not recognizing that what comes from that, right? And so I try to encourage, I don't, if I want to be clear, I'm not a neurodivergent coach. I'm a black autistic woman, so I guess I attract neurospicy.
Clarity.
Yeah, I clearly do, right? But I always tell them, and all of my clients, who are change makers, they trying to change the world. They're dreamers, visionaries, revolutionaries, they burn out real quick because everything's on their shoulders. They're taking too much responsibility for everything. And I tell them they got to treat their energy like currency and their clarity contract. And I think that we, as neurospicy people, gifted people, black indigenous people, queer people, because of our unique lens and perspectives, we are walking gifts. I'm not saying better than other people. I don't believe in rating human beings. I don't even like when people start talking about low energy, low vibration. I'm like, I don't know what that is. Human beings are human beings. We all just trying to figure it out, okay? What I do know is that some people are great at engineering and some people suck at it. You should never have me in a manufacturing lab. I don't work well with my hands unless I'm typing, okay? You don't want me singing anything, not even like happy birthday, okay?
Wow.
So, you just gotta know where your limits are, what you're great at and what you're not. But where you're great at, you're going to have an immense level of clarity. Not, I'm clear on this. Anybody can be clear on my opinion, right? But we got clarity comes from this weird mix of praxis, theory and practice mixed together. You get some praxis. You throw in, I'm highly informed about this, but I've been applying what I've been informed about. So now I have some level of knowledge about it. I'm applying my knowledge and sharing it with people, and it's meshing with other people. So now it's coming to wisdom. So you get these levels of learning. So your clarity is a contract. If you said it's 2.5 millimeters to the left, and that's what you do, honey, I'm doing 2.5 mil. Are you sure? A little bit more? You sure? When grandma said, no, put a little bit more salt in, you said, grandma, this much? Or no, this much. And she said, go on this much. Clarity is a contract when somebody knows what the hell they're doing. And I think first and foremost, we as neurospicy, neurodivergent, I call us neurodistinct, we have got to recognize when we have clarity. To hold is a contract. And when you do have that clarity, you're talking about consultancy. Yeah. And I'm not saying you have to become a business owner. I don't think people realize that there's a whole level of things called freelancing. I don't think people realize that there are people who work off of, I have these 3 people that I have a long-standing contract with. I have a retainer with them. They each pay me $6,000 a month. I don't even know people who are working and getting paid that kind of money. And these people work $3 a week. Huh?
There's no confusion.
There's no confusion. Employees.
Clarity, right?
But you have to have the clarity in order to make it your contract. If they have the clarity, the contract's going to be extraction. I need you to understand that. It's always going to be extraction. That's how the system is set up. So if your energy is currency, you can't just be doing everything. So if you signed up to do these 3 things as a coordinator, an associate director, a regional VP, I don't care what's going on with the company. The board of directors and the trustees need to take care of that. You understand what I'm saying? These stakeholders that are mad because it's plopping, yeah, they need to take care of that. And you need to find a way to be self-sustaining in this world. So I think it's the attaching ourselves to them. Your energy is the currency, not you being employed by them. It's your clarity that is the contract, not what they validate out of what you say and do. You have to be validating it from internally so that it can be a contract. And I think when you think about it like that, you'll recognize the moment like, oh, okay, so I understand that part of the job was for me to put on this gala every year. But now y'all want to do a symposium every, right? So I would love to pitch my business to do that under a proposal, because we know that that can't fit within my full-time job, correct? And at this point, last little pro tip, start documenting from the moment you start a job. I don't know why we wait till something happened to document.
But yeah, you know, everybody says that, Ebony, and I think it's easier said than done. I'm not saying you're absolutely right. I just think, again, we get so swamped in the work because we get accepting so much. We eventually don't even have the time. I'm not saying it's an excuse, but I'm saying as somebody who's always like, I'm going to document everything, I always have that document the first week or 2, and then the work starts to just, you know what happens? The last thing you're going back to is that Google Doc where you're updating on Google.
I definitely don't recommend tracking your time. Like, right, you do not want to create a log for the feds. Like, that's not what we're doing here, right? What I'm suggesting is cover your ass. You have got to know what is straight green light versus I'm dealing with this because I'm employed.
Got it.
Every instance of I'm dealing with this because I'm employed needs to be documented. Who are the key players? What did they know? What did you know? What did you ask for? What did you receive? Just ask yourself some questions and document it all. We should not be waiting until something happens. Something happened the moment you got hired. I need you to understand that. If you are at a consultant level and you are an employee, something happened. When you are a consultant and you're an expert at what you do, you're not an employee. You're on boards, you're in think tanks, you're running your own business, you're a freelancer that might have these 3 organizations that you do this great thing for because those are the only 3 you choose to work with because you got it like that. I love those people. But consultants don't work as employees, because what they do cannot fit within an employment structure. Does that make sense? Where someone's telling you what to do, but they are not the expert of this. How can you tell me what to do when you're not the expert of how this gets done? How can you tell me what the budget will be and how this is going to work? How do you dictate the policies and procedures out of your HR department for what I'm finna do for you in manufacturing? Explain that. This is broken. It's a failing system, and every company operates this way. Oh, we know because we're the company. No, you're an employee under another entity that's as vague as fuck and doesn't know anything without its employees. You asked what would it look like to build a workplace or even client relationships for those of us who are business owners, right? Rooted in consent, clarity, and creative sovereignty. And I'm gonna leave y'all with this. It's real simple. It looks like truth. It does not look like performance. It doesn't look like placation. It's not desperate. There's no pressure to bend or break. You're allowed to be, so you can figure out what the fuck you want to do. You're allowed to choose. No, I'm not going to have bandwidth for that. It's not just given and assigned to you. Any environment like that is not going to work. And I think that when you hear someone say, I love my job, it's a healthy environment, ask them if they can tell their boss no.
Okay, that's real. That's real.
I think I know, I wouldn't say I know no companies where this is possible. But can you say no without retaliation, without some kind of pushback, without being kicked off of that favorite ERG group that you got to lead? As a volunteer, they're gonna kick you off of it because they didn't like what you said at the last staff meeting. And these are real things. And so I feel like there needs to be defined deliverables, there needs to be defined decision makers, there needs to be defined timelines. The same way that you would have within a consultancy, notice, right? And there can't be ambiguity being used as a tool of control. And I think every single day at those companies, like, we are going to, oh, we don't know, we'll figure it out. Okay, we'll have another meeting about it. That is all to continue to control and allow things to stay at the status quo. So I think don't allow people to, it's not okay for the CEO to be confused. It is not okay for your leadership team to have no idea what to do. It is not okay for your nonprofit to be in the red for the first time in decades and nobody knows why. Okay? But we just promoted someone to a senior finance director. I need us to stop. And this promoting based upon loyalty is another conversation. So I just want people to understand that if you are feeling like you are being trusted to lead, you're being respected for your process. So how you be and therefore how you do things. Not what you be and what you do. That's objectification. How you be and how you do things. Are you respected for that? And are you honored for the contribution that you bring without being boxed in, tamed, or tokenized? If that is happening, then I would say, yeah, you're probably in an environment that is working really hard to make sure that that environment provides consent, clarity, and creative sovereignty. And I say, show me that company. I'd say, show me a very successful, profitable company that has customers and clients that think that they offer a real solution to a real problem. And they love the folks that they deal with over there at the whatever for whatever they go to it for. But that's not often. And so these are the kinds of businesses, brands, and movements I'm here to build with my clients. There's no reason why you can't do this. Every one of us can do it. It just starts with the truth. So when I say it looks like truth, it looks like truth. Tell the truth and build everything around it, from your human-based systems to your tech-based systems. We're talking about operations, policies, and procedures, but we're also talking about how you set up that. How did you set up your SAP, or how did you set up your Salesforce and your HubSpot? Did that actually serve the way that your people are, considering the fact that everyone is non-tech savvy at your company? I know we're smarter than this as human beings. And so I hold us to a higher standard. All of these systems, whether human-based or tech-based, are made by us. So if we don't like what we're seeing, we can do something about it. And I think when it comes to employment, there's a lot of performance, a lot of placation, and a lot of pressure for us to not be who we are. And since that's where the greatness comes from, that's where the doing comes from, I think we need to find a way to allow people to be. And you can't do that without consent. In any situation, personal or professional, you cannot do that without clarity of communication, of intentions, of why you did what you did, explanations and all of that. And then we need people to have creative sovereignty. If I made it, I made it. You give me credit for it. Why are you stealing my IP? I brought this to the table. But we don't have that in today's society between employees and employers. And it's really sad.
Yeah, I think again, just coming from the point of truth, the truth is sounds so easy, but truthful side is true, right? Like it will start, when it starts with ourselves, right? So it comes back from yesterday's conversation with grass to today's conversation with finding this balance between being employed and being unpaid. So here's the truth. Right? First of all, thank you for being here. So just because you can do it all doesn't mean that you should. Just because you're gifted, intuitive, strategic, doesn't mean that you are an ever-growing, infinite container giving everybody the power. And just because they ask does not mean oh, you can say no. We're no longer shrinking. We're no longer staying silent. And we're definitely not showing up to fix broken systems without conversation, boundaries, and clarity. So, tonight's episode wasn't just a conversation. We're just going ahead and trying to shift things. You may be uncomfortable, you may be triggered, you may not even watch it. That's fine. But if you've ever been unpaid, undervalued, or underestimated, consider this as your permission slip to rewrite what that looks like for you. Consider this as your free pass to get buck in your own system that you're stuck in. And in this new season, this will be concerning. Not mean because we're broke or we're in a tight bind. I'm in that situation myself. If you move like that, we won't profit. So thanks for tapping in with me.